Hello and welcome back to Walk the Cinema podcast. Today we are starting off our Spooktober season with Phantom Carriage.
So the way we do these October Halloween releases is we pick influential films for the horror genre and film in general.
And we're kind of going in like chronological order. So This one is our earliest one that we're going to be talking about, and our subsequent ones kind of come after this one. And, they're all like influential, I'd say, in their own ways.
We'll have a movie that's directly influenced by this because we're going to cover in the future a Kubrick film, and this movie influenced Kubrick. It influenced Bergman.
Mm-hmm.
Bergman watched this all the time and showed it to everyone. Even Charlie Chaplin said this is the best movie ever made. He's quoted as saying that.
Mm-hmm.
And this was groundbreaking visual effects and even narrative-wise with flashbacks instead of flashbacks.
Yeah, and like basically the plot of the movie is it's New Year's Eve, which I think this might be the best New Year's Eve movie, centric movie.
This movie came out on New Year's Eve too, so it like matched the time that it was in the film, which makes it extra spooky.
Yeah.
If you're in Sweden in 1921.
But so it kind of starts off with this sister, this nun, kind of. She's not a nun, but she works for the Salvation Army, and she's on her deathbed with tuberculosis. Like, she's actively dying, and she's going to die. And she keeps asking for this man called David Home. And David Home is a drunk. He's kind of ruined his life, and he starts telling this story about this man that he used to know and what his like theory or like an urban legend, I guess, on what happens to the last person who dies on New Year's Eve. Mm-hmm. They become the driver for the Phantom Carriage, and the Phantom Carriage is basically, he's not death, but he's kind of like the Grim Reaper. He does death's bidding, and he carries the souls that have died all year
into the afterlife.
Into the afterlife.
And like they say, one day feels like 100 years.
Mm-hmm. Or 300 years.
So it's like a big punishment.
Yeah.
That happens to like... Because then later, George, which is the guy that is currently the Grim Reaper, explains to David that the last person to die on New Year's Eve is also a bad person.
Mm-hmm. And has to repent for their sins.
At that point we get kind of a Christmas Carol.
Yeah, I'd say this is very reminiscent of the Christmas Carol, which the Christmas Carol is much older than this, I believe. So it might have, I had assumed that it had some influence.
Sure.
But basically, David Home like refuses to see Sister Edith, and basically ends up being killed by another homeless man.
Drunkard.
Yeah, drunkard. He's at least drunk. But then he becomes like a phantom and meets George again. And they kind of go on this journey where they see like parts of... They don't necessarily see these things happen. We're just getting the flashbacks of it. So we get a flashback of him being a good father and husband and a good brother. And then after he meets George, that's when things kind of go south. And George explains that the reason why he's the Phantom driver is because he's the one that turned David into this kind of lowlife, and that he's done it to other people as well.
Right. The whole movie is like the story of a man that went through life, I guess,
corrupting people.
Sure. I mean, he's just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And we see all the terrible things he did, and we follow all these terrible things, and then he repents by the end. It's a very traditional type of story. It's just told in a way that at the time was fresh, and it still kind of is. The story is very compelling to me, but so is the visuals. Of course, I think everyone remembers. If you watch this, you remember the visuals of it.
Yeah, it's really impressive for the time, and like I think they really do kind of hold up. I think that obviously the quality of the print, I guess, it kind of varies, but the one that we watched, some of the phantom scenes were a little bit too light, where you could
the ones in the water.
Yeah, you could just barely see. So I'm not sure if that's just because of the print or because of, the technology.
When they overlap it over the water, it is a little, like, faint and far away.
But other than that, I mean, it's still really impressive and it still looks good and it doesn't, like, take away from the movie at all,
That's something that happened in the silent era, which people overlook. Because people think of, a lot of times, of silent films as boring and... I'm not going to watch a silent film because it's boring. They don't talk. They don't talk, but they have to make up for it. So they use innovative effects. They're always trying to push the visual as hard as they can. And the music in this worked so well for me. And I don't know if the score is the original score. Most of the times it's not. It's someone that, makes a new one and tries to fit it as best as possible to the story. But the one we have now is really, really good.
I agree. It's haunting and it's beautiful, so.
And it really works with the tension.
Yeah, it's very captivating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is captivating, and I think that, the music with the visuals and with the storytelling itself all kind of has this perfect storm where you do kind of get honestly a perfect movie, essentially.
Right, and this was directed and starring Victor Sjöström, something. I don't know how to say his name properly.
Yeah, they're all Swedish people.
I've seen some of his films, and I think he's a great director, like an all-time great director.
Mm.
A Man There Was is like an underrated movie of his that I really, really like. He just was really good. And as an actor, directing himself, it was also, like, really good.
Yeah, I think you really buy into the plot line. And I feel like I tend to, when I watch silent films, sometimes the plot line gets lost.
It does sometimes. Yeah.
Because, even if you kind of get the gist of it and you have like the little text that they kind of cut the visuals with, like sometimes
interludes.
Yeah, I just feel like sometimes, since we as a like 2020s type people are viewing this, we're not in that mindset to watch a silent film the way that like a 1920s people were like trained to watch these types
sometimes
of things.
It is difficult for the story to come across, and the interludes are translated because Hollywood didn't exist back then, so the movies are foreigner, I suppose. Not that it matters. That's another thing with silent films. That back then, really foreign films, that's not a thing, because it's just interludes you can exchange.
Yeah.
So you can watch a movie from anywhere and try to follow it. But yeah, sometimes it doesn't translate too great, but this does. Like, there's not a moment that I'm lost.
I would say that it does take a little bit of time in the beginning to kind of get your bearings with the movie, especially if you don't really go into it having any clue of what's supposed to be happening.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, when I went into this, I knew that it was essentially about this ghost carriage, but beyond that, I had no idea of what the movie was supposed to be about. So when we kind of start with this charity woman on her deathbed, that kind of not necessarily confuses me, but it does like take a second to get immersed within the story.
It's not really about the carriage.
Right.
The carriage is a driving force, but it's about a man. And a man that wasted his life, and a man that repents his life by the end. Mm-hmm. It's this man's journey in the afterlife to just see all the mistakes he's made.
Yeah, because he became a drunkard after he met George. He went to jail due to public intoxication.
Made his brother a killer.
Yeah, because his brother needed that, I guess, guiding force that he brought.
His wife left, and now he's going through Sweden trying to find his wife.
But even when he meets her again, and even when Edith brings them back together, he squanders the connection that he had with his wife again.
And that's part of why Edith feels so guilty, and why the story starts with her, because she's the one that brought them back together. and she feels like she did a disservice to both of them.
Yeah, because, I mean, she wishes that she never introduced them again, because now his wife is sad and depressed and doesn't feel like she can go on, and he's not any better, you know? He's just even more, like, he's been left by his family again, but it really is nobody's fault but his.
Right,
And
because
so,
we see him even, like, when Edith fixes his jacket the night that she meets him, and he immediately rips out everything she's done.
yeah.
Like, she busted her ass over it, and he doesn't care and just laughs at her. He's doing it to himself. Like, he's creating his own problems. People solved it for them, and he still creates them. And we see it at the end that changes, where he tries to save his wife and kids.
Yeah, because at the end we find out he likes him and George are, you know, afterlife little guys, and they're, you know, watching as his wife is about to put poison in the, like, tea kettle that she's going to feed to herself and then their kids, because she doesn't see, like, there's a way out of this. She's so sad. She doesn't want her kids to live without both her parents. Like, you know, it's a really desolate situation to be in. And so that kind of makes David come back from the dead, essentially.
Right. It's a heavy situation, even as a viewer.
Yeah.
If you don't know what's going to happen, you're like, oh, damn, these kids are going to die.
Yeah, because, I mean, up until this point, like, the movie doesn't really feel hopeful. You know? No. You have a little bit of hope when David in the afterlife does go to Edith, and she dies, like, knowing that he's at least, like, remorseful for what he did. You get a sense of that, and you also kind of get a sense that, like, the only people that, at least this is what I got, the only people that get taken by the Phantom Carriage are potentially people that didn't live their life well, because they don't take Edith into the carriage with them. He says that others will come for her.
Right.
So
he does say that. And you could interpret that like, oh, it's no longer my job, it's going to be your job, so you do it. Mm-hmm. Or you could interpret it as, the good people come for her, I come for the bad people.
Yeah, and I think it kind of alludes to, like, he comes for the bad people just because, and, like, one of the scenes that we see as an example of the driver of the Phantom Carriage, the Grim Reaper guy, it's, you know, after a man kills himself. And, I mean, this has the Salvation Army, like, tie-in, which is a religious group. I think that at the time it was still kind of, Sweden was at least somewhat religious. So...
No, this is definitely, to some extent, religious. It plays with, like, the fear of death and, like, hell.
Mm-hmm. So, but I think, like, usually in, like, at least Catholicism, it's a sin, or it's like a...
Suicide, yeah.
Yeah, suicide isn't, like, you're not going to go to heaven if you commit suicide type thing. So I think it is kind of like what is it called? The intermediate part of the afterlife. Purgatory? It's like a purgatory. Like, you're not going to hell, but you're not going to heaven either.
Yeah, you're just going to hang out with the unbaptized babies for a while.
Pretty awful to think about. But anyway. But yeah, I think that visually this is very striking.
We're talking about visually. This is something that is always shown with the colors, with the color filter, which is not what happens to every silent film. But this is a good example of why the filter colors matter for these black and white silent films. Because it makes it easier to distinguish when they're inside of a house, outside. So when it cuts to different characters, you're not confused where you go to. So, like, it changes the filter color. We talked about this last year with Nosferatu, how we watched it with no filters.
Yeah.
So this one is always with the filters. I don't think I've ever seen it without it. Not that I've seen this movie many times, but I have seen it before. And it's always with the color filters, and that's something I enjoy and I wish didn't get lost for so many films.
Yeah, I think it does kind of add to the experience. I don't know. It's visually I was very impressed by the special effects. You know, to me, filmmaking in and of itself is kind of mind-boggling. Televisions kind of always are freaky to me. I don't know. Just like that technology that we have the ability to like transmit moving pictures
Right.
across like globally is so wild to me.
But what they did here is a lot simpler than that, than the internet and streaming and all that. But I think the simplicity of it is what makes it last so long. Because, like, you can watch it now, and, like, it doesn't look oaky, it doesn't look goofy. Because he went simple with the effects. It's basically just, like, ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
And they look like ghosts, and they go through walls, but it doesn't look goofy.
Yeah.
It just works. And it's never gonna age bad, like some CGI does. Because they did the most simple things with it, and didn't try to do anything crazy. And the part that did age the worst was, the carriage over the water. Because the water moves a lot, and it's too light-colored.
Light colored, yeah.
And there's too much light in general, so it makes it a little...
hard to track.
Yeah, a little, yeah. And it's not super close, or like... You see what he's doing, but just not in detail.
Yeah.
But everything else is perfect for me. I think it's a perfect movie. I really do love this.
Oh, it's definitely really interesting. And then to kind of like go back to how this influenced people, like there's a very obvious scene where you can see exactly where a filmmaker has taken inspiration from the movie. There's a scene where David's wife is trying to leave him for the second time with their children because he's still a drunkard. He's kind of actively trying to spread his disease.
Yeah, he coughs on people.
He coughs on people, and he doesn't take caution with his own children either. And so she's like, we're gonna leave. And so he like catches her before she tries to leave, but she like locks him in. It's not the bathroom, but it's a room in the house. She like locks him away from them. And he grabs an axe and starts hacking away at the door, to get to her. And it's very reminiscent of The Shining,
like
Kubrick
The
Shining
just took that scene. I mean, that's what he did. He took the scene, here's Jack scene, and we associate it with The Shining.
Yeah.
But it's a lot older than The Shining, and if you watch this, it's immediately the same scene.
You can like pinpoint it out exactly.
It's done differently. In The Shining, it's done better. Here, they kind of use a take where he kind of messes up with one of the wood pieces.
Yeah.
I noticed every time I watch it, where like he tries to open the door and it's like, oh wait, there's a wood piece in front of me, I gotta push away, and then goes again for the door.
Yeah.
So it's done crispier in The Shining, but it's definitely a copy of this.
Yeah, and I think like the intentions behind like the scenes are different, I guess. Like they're both you're both scared for his wife and children in both scenes, but in this one it feels, I don't know, it's less suspenseful in a way.
Yeah, it matters less in this
because
movie.
You kind of already know that he doesn't harm his wife at the least, because you see her go to eat it towards the beginning of the movie, so you know she's still alive, so you kind of already know that at the very least, like, she's unharmed, whereas in The Shining, I feel like you don't have that security of like having the flash forward and flash back.
It is more effective in The Shining in every way,
but I think we'll probably like talk more about it when because we are going to be doing The Shining.
2 episodes from now you can expect.
Well, I think it's 3 episodes, is it not?
Maybe 3 episodes from now, you can expect The Shining.
Yeah.
But, yeah, back to the influence. Again, Bergman would show this to people every summer. He would watch it multiple times a year, from what I get out of just documents.
Mm-hmm.
Super important movie, especially in Europe, but even in the US, it was very important. And at the time, super impactful. And even now, I would say it's great in every way. There's no flaws to me. There's no real weakness. Like, of course, not everything is perfect, because nothing is. Like, there's always little gags that happen. Again, with the breaking down door, I feel like he struggles a little bit with the scene, but maybe they didn't have another door they could bust down, so
yeah,
that makes sense. Maybe
it was a one-take type thing.
But, like, that's not a real problem.
Yeah, it's not a real criticism. It's just kind of is what it is.
So, yeah, 10 out of 10 for me. Love it. It's great. Not super scary as a horror movie. Not as scary as Nosferatu is, or The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari from the same era. But it's still a horror movie. Some people think it's not. It's more of a tale, which it is in a way.
I'd say it's still a horror movie.
Yeah, the mood it sets was influential for other horror movies.
Yeah. And I mean, it still does, like, have this type of kind of horror tension building up. Because, like we said, the scene where he's breaking down the door, that's still tension-based, you know? And then as he...
I mean, there's ghosts.
Yeah, it's the ghosts. You see someone kill themselves, kind of. It, like, cuts away and stuff.
Yeah, it cuts away.
But
you see kids almost
yeah
getting murdered by their mom. I mean, it's heavy. It's a heavy movie.
Yeah. But I give it a 9 out of 10. There's just something about it that I just couldn't give it a 10 out of 10, but potentially I could on a second rewatch. I do plan on rewatching this at some point, because it was good, and
I'll rewatch it anytime.
It's enjoyable. I have a good time watching it. The subject's kind of sad, and I guess my one criticism that I do have, but it's not necessarily a criticism, it's just kind of a thought, is that this is purely a David story. Like, everyone around him is kind of used as a plot device.
Right.
You know, where, like, no one else has any type of characterization outside of, like, how David views him.
Yeah, the girl's love for him is a little baseless.
Yeah.
But if we're going to go into explaining why she loves him, then it's a whole different movie. Yeah. So I understand. But I mean, her love for him doesn't make the most sense, but it's necessary in a way.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't disagree. And I don't think it's like, I mean, you can only do so much in a silent film, you know? Sure. You can't, like...
And even in a talkie, you can only do so much. I mean, going into her psyche and why she actually fell in love with this terrible man is just a whole different movie.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, I think that even, like, all the characters kind of are one-dimensional, besides David, potentially. And you see, it's because you're with David the whole time, so you kind of see his progression from good dad to drunk to hopeful reformist. I don't know.
Born again.
Yeah. But, like, everybody else has, like, their like, set archetype, I guess.
Which
like, George is a bad guy, just straight up.
Yeah.
He's drunk, bad guy. Then you have Edith, who's, like, an angel and can do no wrong. Yeah. And then you have the wife that's just sad.
Yeah.
You know? So, I don't know. That's pretty much how it is.
This comes from a country that was religious at the time, which is funny because Sweden is one of the least religious countries now. It's one of the countries that has the most atheists now, if not the number one. I'm not checking it right now, but... So yeah, it is... I mean,
it's been 100 years.
Yeah, it's been 100 years, and it was strongly based on a lot of religion. I mean, the Salvation Army is a religious group that tries to help people. And that's why she's an angel the whole time, and she only does what's right. And she does only do what's right.
Yeah. Even if it hurts her, or even if it, like, doesn't purely benefit her, you know? She's just doing it out of the kindness of her heart. So she's, like, the best type of person you could be.
And if you want to be the best type of person you could be, you could give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast or Spotify, and subscribe to us and give us a like on YouTube.
But that's all for now, so we'll see you next time.